Hey y'all, I wanted to hop on and talk about a topic I talk about quite a lot in sessions with clients and when I do different readings. But I realize I don't talk about this so much on social media. And so I was like, all right, let me actually talk about this topic around astrology because I do a lot of work with astrology. I've been into astrology since I was like a little child, basically. It's just something I had just naturally gravitated towards, studying my chart, studying the charts of other folks. But my perception on astrology has changed quite a bit since I've woken up spiritually. And I work with folks to uncover some of the mysteries of their astrology charts, but I must say that I do it in a way to transcend, right? Like, I do feel like astrology keeps us in a box a lot of times. It's an algorithm that's been utilized by the false matrix to keep us docile. The way I describe it to folks is if if all the world is a stage, like there's that old William Shakespeare quote that says like all the world is a stage, then imagine that your astrology chart is the script of your life. Did you create that script? Some people would say, yeah, you did create this script, that before you incarnated on this planet, that you sat with your spiritual team and co-created a script around the certain lessons that you would learn in your life, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's partially true, but there have been a great deal of manipulations within the false matrix to basically keep us on a cycle of karma, a cycle of constant reincarnation where we're constantly coming back and reincarnating to learn lessons for our own spiritual good. Whereas at the same time, we're not quite given the tools in this earthly plane to even know how to learn these lessons. And then there's this whole thing around like false karma, false debt, karmic transference, destiny swapping, swapped ancestries, which I go into a lot more depth both on this channel, my TikTok platform, as well as on my YouTube platform at the Goddess Keys. So if that perks your interest at all, check that out. And that's something that more folks are coming out in the woodwork to discuss, that this concept around false debt, false karma might actually be a thing that we pay attention to, okay? So I think if you're looking to transcend the constant, like the trap of reincarnation and really seeking spiritual freedom, relationship with folks outside of karma, more along the lines of resonance. A lot of times karma keeps us in pain traps. And that's not to say that karma is negative, but it's something that we at some point will need to transcend, okay? And that's what the earth is doing now. She's dropping density, she's dropping her karma, okay? And this is why it's really important for us to get to the crux of our karma. And when I speak of karma, I'm talking about the law of cause and effect, okay? So if you cause something, or if your ancestors caused something, and your ancestors are you, okay? And there's been a lot of genetic mixing happening, and I'm talking way beyond racial mixing here. I'm talking about interdimensional genetic mixing that has happened with humanity on this planet. So we got a little bit of everything going on in our DNA to reconcile in order to clear karma. So if we don't get to the crux of what those things are, then what will happen is that we won't evolve, okay? And because the earth is dropping density, our lack of evolution and our density will a lot of times lead to us either staying in a state of non-evolution or extinction, okay? I know that sounds like super heavy and all that. I don't know. I guess it's this whole, like, right now we're supposed to be in Saturn retrograde, and Saturn is the planet of harsh lessons, karma. It's also the taskmaster. It rules time, it rules duty, it rules ancestry, it rules responsibility. So maybe I'm kind of tapping into the energies of Saturn. I got a lot of Saturn influences in my chart and stuff. And I am somebody who has definitely had to deal with karma, not just karma for what's going on in this lifetime, but how it's manifested in my ancestry. And it's a huge mission that I have at this time, to reconcile karma and to get to karmic completion. And a big part of my path is supporting other folks with that journey as well. And in order to get there, we need to see the manipulation of karma, all right, which is still very murky. Not a lot of folks are really talking about it. We're hearing more about it, but it's still a very nebulous topic. To get to the crux of this, you read your astrology chart, though. If you read your astrology chart as this script of your life to keep you in a box, right? Like, this is the algorithm that's been laid out by the false matrix. It's actually based, like, especially if you look at Western astrology and the 12 planet system, it's very much based upon the Anunnaki, or the Anunnaki as they are commonly referred to. And a lot of times they utilize this to program us and to make it so that some beings on this planet, we're going to have a harder time with life and would be in a constant state of indebtedness during their reincarnation cycle. Well, why would the Anunnaki do this? Well, first of all, the Anunnaki were a family of 12. There were just 12 beings from the Pleiades who came here and basically colonized the planet in the pursuit of seeking gold. They had ran out of gold on their planet. They came to planet Earth to mine gold. They weren't trying to mine gold, but they wanted to get gold. So they tried different ways to manipulate humanity to mine gold for them. And a lot of that had to do with messing with our genetics, messing with our DNA, keeping us out of our true capacity so that we would be docile and we would be somewhat of a slave race, okay? And a lot of us are waking up from this dynamic, and we're taking our power back, and we're seeing the ways that we've been mentally imprisoned, spiritually imprisoned, financially imprisoned. And the way to really get to a lot of keys and codes to this liberation journey is by looking at your astrology chart. You can see it as a playbook around where you might be experiencing issues as it relates to karmic transference, as it relates to false debt showing up in your life, as it relates to different karmic lessons that maybe you failed to learn in previous lifetimes, the certain ways that you might, who and what are the ops in your life. So there's something to look at in astrology called the oppositions. So where are the ops in your life? A lot of times oppositions in astrology literally mean those are your ops, okay? And one thing to know, if you, first of all, let's just start with the basics, right? If you wanted to do this on your own, you could, right? You could learn your astrology chart, and maybe a lot of y'all have. I think a lot of y'all are starting to like look at your charts a bit more, getting past the sun, moon, and rising. And if you're not, I hope that at the very least that this live encourages you to go beyond the surface of your astrology chart, okay? Because it will show a lot of the ways that you might be programmed to be manipulated in this system. And if you kind of know what those tricks are, then you can subvert them, you know? But one thing to really look at with your astrology is, first of all, okay, where can you get your astrology chart? You can always go to astro.com and get a free astrology chart. And you want to look for the pie chart. You basically want to get like a pie chart. It's going to look like, a circle. It looks really confusing if you've never seen it before or never interacted with it before. And a lot of times people, they say like, yeah, like I tried to get into my astrology. It just felt too dense. Like it just felt really overwhelming. And that's a part of the whole system, y'all. Make it overwhelming to where you don't want to actually divulge and dive into it, okay? And when I say read your astrology chart, I'm not talking about following daily horoscopes. I'm not talking about keeping yourself in a limited box around, well, this is what, you know, if I have a Venus in this, or if I have a Mercury in that, then this is how I'm supposed to be. It's like, no. You might see where you are supposed to transcend and evolve out of, okay? So first of all, like, this is the map of you in this third dimensional reality. Get past the overwhelm. Okay, there are free resources out there to support you with taking the deep dive. You go on astro.com, you type in your information, make sure you know your exact birth time. If you don't know your exact birth time, you know, there's folks out there who don't know their exact birth time. Try to find it, you know, try to find it. So it's very, very critical, because, you know, you could know obviously you know your date of birth, but the time that you were born, the exact minute that you were born, is going to shift everything up. So some people have weird stuff out there where their birth certificates, for whatever reason, don't list the time of their birth. You know, funny story. I used to be married, and I've always been into astrology, but somehow the guy I was dating, who became my husband, he never had his like birth time and stuff. So literally, I actually didn't know his birth chart information when I married him, you know. And it's kind of a funny story now, because like when we finally tracked it down, it made so much sense. And we probably, I don't know, maybe we wouldn't have gotten married if I had seen it all, or I'm not sure. But it was literally in the birth chart that I would be kind of blinded by some of him, and like the fact I didn't even have his birth chart. It's just kind of funny. You'll see like weird stuff like that happen in your astrology chart. Okay, but yeah, all that to say, get your birth time. If you don't have it, go on astro.com. I also do astrology readings in my ascension readings that I offer, and you can look at that in the link in the bio. And it's like it's the fundamental first thing I go over with folks in coaching or in one-off readings, is the astrology chart. We don't usually cover it in one session, and we usually go over it in different layers, depending on the certain themes or the certain karmic patterns that need to be transcended at a certain time. Okay, but you can do it yourself. You can read your chart, look at where all your planets are, you know. So just write it out. Get you a nice little notebook. Write out, okay, my Mercury is in, my Saturn is in, my Sun is in. And then what you could start doing, and yes, this takes a lot of time, you know. A lot of folks, you know, who come to me are pretty serious on their spiritual path, I will say that. But I do get from time to time folks who are overwhelmed by the idea of doing the work and the research. Okay, but this is you. This is the map of you. This is the map of your ancestral karma. This is the map of where you might experience the most spiritual attack on the day-to-day. It's worth the time. Okay, so if you're thinking like, yeah, I want to do all that, I want to do all that research. If you're not going to do research on that, then what will you do research on? You know, so just really kind of think about it. And I get that there's a lot of folks out there that are like, well, I don't want to be boxed in by my birth chart. You know, I don't want to give it too much of my time and energy. And I get that, but just see it more as scripting that you're going to just need to subvert and transcend, you know, as opposed to being boxed in by it. But, you know, what you can do is start looking at YouTube videos for different placements, you know, different placements as it relates to your planets, and start getting a common understanding of what's happening with each planet. You know, first start off with what sign is each planet in, and then you move on to the houses. The houses are really important, and I focus a lot of time and attention with folks on looking at where their houses, what planets are in certain houses, and what oppositions are happening with those planets, you know. So but a lot of times it's showing us like, how are we busting out of this like false matrix system, and how is it going to show up most in your reality, and then also where's your true north, you know. And a lot of times what will happen is wherever you're the most gifted, that's where you're going to have the most hater energy in your chart, especially if you identify as a star seed or a light worker, you know. If it's something like, if you have a destiny, for example, to have financial freedom, then you're going to have a whole bunch of oppositions a lot of times as it relates to your finances. You might have some weird stuff going on, like a weird conversation going on in your 8th house, which represents other people's resources. And then the second house, which represents your resources, you'll have like these weird dynamics happening. If your destiny is to find a divine partnership, or like a divine ascending romantic relationship, you might have all this BS energy as it relates to your partnerships, you know, that kind of stuff. So a lot of times where you see your biggest weaknesses are really your biggest strengths. Okay, the false matrix system just kind of wanted you to think that they were your weaknesses, give you all of these oppositions and all of this hater energy so that you wouldn't try to actually do what you're here to do. Okay, so looking at your astrology, a chart from that kind of transcendent framework. Sorry, I'm just let me catch up with the comments real quick. So I see, when are you coming to H-Town? You know, it's real funny that that you asked that, because, you know, I have not been to Texas yet, and I've kind of been thinking about Texas. Texas, for some weird reason, has been on my mind lately. I don't know. So, and where am I from originally? Born in Chicago, raised in Southern California. Citizen of the world. Okay. So, yeah, transcending your astrology chart, doing the work to learn about it. One thing that I want to say about the houses, okay, so I know it can get overwhelming. So what you first want to do is find out what signs your planets are in. Then you want to learn about the houses, okay? Each house represents something very specific. So let's go back to the analogy of all the world is a stage. And your astrology chart is the script of your life that you've been prescribed by the false matrix to stay within, to keep you bound, okay? Well, the houses would represent essentially each scene of the play that is your life, okay? So there are 12 houses that you're going to find in the traditional Western astrology chart. So each of these 12 houses are very distinct. For example, your first house is going to represent how you appear to folks when they first meet you, okay? It's literally like if this were a scene in the play of your life, it would represent the first impression, like you literally introducing yourself and shaking somebody's hand, you know? That's kind of like this, the scene that the first house represents. So if you're first house dominant, if you got a lot of planets in your first house, that's going to speak to a very specific story. The 12th house, the last house on the astrology chart, is the house of the collective unconscious. And I get a lot of folks who are 12th house dominant who end up attracted to my work. So the 12th house would represent, like if this were the play of your life, it would represent, for example, the dream state. It would literally represent you in a dream, okay? So, and a lot of times the 12th house in particular has been utilized to imprison people in the false matrix. So folks who are very 12th house dominant, who have a lot of planets in their 12th house, or who have a lot of aspects to Neptune, which is the 12th house ruler, which is the ruler of the collective unconscious, which is the ruler of the seas. It's very much connected to the dream world and all that kind of stuff. If you have a lot of aspects in the 12th house, a lot of times you may have been manipulated through your dreams, through the dream state. You may have felt like you had a lot of astral attacks, that kind of stuff. And a lot of times there are like there's some weird entity stuff that can kind of happen with a lot of 12th house dominant folks. But there's a lot of power. Like if you have a lot of planets in the 12th house, you have a great amount of power to transcend the bindings of the false matrix, because you can literally tap in to the collective unconscious, okay? But there's been a lot that's been bound for folks who are very 12th house dominant, who have a lot of Neptune, a lot of Pisces energy as well. There's been a lot to bind these people spiritually and sometimes physically, because the 12th house represents the realm of prisons as well as mental institutions, okay? So a lot of times people who are very highly and spiritually evolved have been kind of hunted down by the false matrix to basically be made to, they're crazy, or there's something deviant about them, that kind of stuff like that. So a lot of that stuff we're breaking through the barriers of, but we kind of want to know like what that looks like in your day-to-day reality, and we can find that out through your birth chart. So you want to learn your birth chart, not to be bound by it, but to transcend it, okay? Another house that I want to talk about for folks who are like kind of interested in this work, I get a lot of folks who are 12th house dominant, so a lot of Pisces, a lot of Neptune, a lot of like maybe 3-4 planets in the 12th house. That happens a lot. I also get a lot of people who are 8th house dominant. So the 8th house is ruled by Scorpio, okay? I always tell folks, in the highest octave, Scorpio or Pluto, which is the 8th house ruler, Pluto represents the underworld. In the highest octave, Pluto can be the phoenix, literally rising above the ashes, okay? And a lot of folks have this phoenix energy. If you are on this spiritual awakening path, like you are here to resurrect yourself, not just you, but your bloodline from a lot of these soul contracts, vows, oaths, and agreements that have kept you and your lineage and your literal DNA bound for eons, okay? Like that's what your mission is here to do. So that's the highest octave though. Now on the lowest octave, the 8th house can represent that literally hell, okay? The hell realms. And so there could be folks out there who have had really gnarly experiences in the dream state, a lot of spiritual bondage kind of stuff, also weird sexual contracts as well. Because at the end of the day, sex, sexual energy, it's a huge energetic exchange. A lot of times when you have intercourse or when you bond with somebody sexually, there's contracts that develop, and it's not just between you and that person, but it's also around lineages or entity attachments, that kind of thing, okay? And so for folks who are very 8th house dominant, have a lot of Plutonian aspects, have a lot of Scorpio. A lot of times these are the natural intuitives. These are the alchemists. These are the ones that are here to rise from the ashes. But a lot of times what's done to these folks in the spiritual realm to kind of keep them out of their power is to keep them in this state of entrapment through their strength, which is their sexuality. And at the core, your sexuality has to do with your kundalini energy, that inner sacred fire of transmutation. If you think about the phoenix, right? How does the phoenix rise above the ashes? It sets itself on fire and renews itself. And the thing about kundalini is that we very much need that in order to transcend a lot of karmic patterns, okay? That's the art of transmutation or transfiguration. And that's something that I'm going to be going more in depth with folks on Patreon about in the coming weeks. The art of resurrection, the art of transfiguration, and what that looks like on the spiritual level, and then also on the third dimension too, okay? So if you have a lot of 8th house aspects going on, be really picky about your partners. Be really picky about who you share energies with, okay? Because you are here to be alchemists and to transmute a lot. And so a lot of times certain beings are going to be directed towards you to get you off of your path. And it may seem like something that's just, oh, we're having fun or this and that, or I thought I was in love with this person. And then you signed up for a whole other deal in the spiritual realm. Okay, I know a lot of folks can probably relate to that. All right. So, but learn your astrology chart to transcend it. If you're looking for support with this, then check out the links in my bio and I would be happy to support you with this. I do offer an ascension reading where basically we're going into first your astrology chart from a transcendental approach where we're looking to transcend it. But then also we're looking at my divination system. I have a self-guided divination system that I've channeled called the Genetic Path Cutter system, which just will support you with certain karmic patterns that you're here to transcend as well. So if that's something you're interested in, look at the links below, and then also check out astro.com to get your free Western astrology chart. And also look into galactic astrology, okay? So more is coming out around galactic astrology. Galactic astrology brings into this this conversation that maybe the 12 houses is something we will transcend altogether. Maybe there's this cosmic galactic energy that we might need to tap into, because the 12th house system keeps us within this particular solar system. It's only like telling us what's happening within this particular solar system. But what if we have traversed other realms and dimensions outside of this solar system? It's like a more way of expanding your approach to astrology. And it also takes into account a couple of things. There's this 13th sign, 13th planet that folks are talking about called Ophiuchus. And you're going to hear more about that planet in the times to come. And it has that phoenix energy. Ophiuchus has the energy of both fire and water. It has kind of like, it's somewhere in between Scorpio as well as Sagittarius. And it has this resurrection kind of energy, okay? And more information is coming out around the 13th planet, the 13th sign, as well as the power of 13. If you look at a lot of the systems that we utilize, we've kind of focused in on 12. So like, even if you think about, you know, sometimes they talk about the 12 dimensions, or they'll talk about, you know, if you look at the multiplication tables that we were learned in school, what did it always go to? 12. If we look at our clocks, right, what do they go to? 12. If we look at our Gregorian calendar, what does it go to? 12. This is that Anunnaki kind of system, which was meant to keep us closed, which was meant to keep us within a cycle of energy harvesting, okay? But if we're transcending that, then it opens up the system, all right? And more possibilities come into play. And so this is why it might be of interest to you to also look into galactic astrology and see some points in a galactic astrology chart to look at. And first, you can type in galactic astrology on Google. I actually have some videos on my TikTok about galactic astrology and some of these topics that I did a few months ago. But there is a free galactic astrology chart that you can get. You do need to know your traditional Western astrology chart. Like, you need to know your basic birth time information to get your galactic astrology chart, but this is a free resource that you can get. I think it's like galacticastro.com or something. Don't quote me on it. But it's out there, and you want to start looking at your relationship to the Galactic Center. Something called the Galactic Center. Scroll down my TikTok and I have a whole thing on the Galactic Center. And then, which is very in alignment with the whole Christmas thing. Every time we have Christmas, according to the Gregorian calendar, we're always really close to the Galactic Center, interestingly enough. Another aspect to look at is something called the Great Attractor. That's another aspect to look at. And then there's another one called the Super Attractor. So just kind of see what sign your Galactic Center is in, what sign your Great Attractor is in, what sign your Super Attractor is in, and then how many planets are around there. Because if you have like 2-3 planets playing out with these galactic energies, then that just speaks to you being here to transcend this closed loop system. So a lot of starseeds, a lot of light workers are going to have a lot of energy going on with the Galactic Center and the Great Attractor and Super Attractor, that kind of stuff, because a lot of y'all are here to move past the closed loop system of 12 and move beyond into galactic energies, okay? Or intergalactic energies. So check out galactic astrology. So just to kind of wrap things up, so I'm going to hop off. To transcend your birth chart, first of all, you got to learn your birth chart, understand it, overstand it. It is a project within itself. It will take you years to have your own understanding of your birth chart. So take it slow. A lot of this stuff. So just think of it like this. Okay. So back in the day, priests, priestesses, they would know about their spiritual calling at a very young age. Their families would let them know. They would have elders that would sit with them, train them in all the different spiritual arts from a very early age. Okay, this was a part of the culture. All right, and then after that, after being raised with that spiritual knowledge, they would go on to study their craft for decades. Okay. A lot of us don't have that, or we didn't have that. We didn't have that growing up because a lot of our consciousness was stripped. A lot of our ancestral knowledge was stripped from us. A lot of veils of illusion were put over our eyes, okay? So if you are at this point where you're waking up and you know you're here to activate your gifts, your potential, your DNA, then it's a constant game of catch up, all right? You are always an eternal student in this process. So a lot of times, folks will want to rush it and be like, okay, I want to be a master now. I want to just have it all activated now. And it's like, it would be great if it worked that way. But to be honest, this ascension path is something that you will be working towards as a lifetime goal and pursuit. And you'll notice that your life improves through this process ultimately, but it's a labor of love. It's a labor of reclamation, not just for your own spiritual knowledge, but your ancestral knowledge and gifts as well. Okay, so just think about that. Even when the knowledge was present within the bloodline and acknowledged, it would still be several decades of study. All right, and it was a way of life. All right. So now we're not going to be able to fast track this and just be like, all right, I'm going to just have this downloaded to me in 6 months and then that will be that. You might evolve and resurrect certain parts of yourself in 6 months, but you'll still be the eternal student, okay? So don't try to rush the process or get frustrated with yourself for not knowing enough because we're just in this constant game of catch up, This is what we're doing at this time. So, but you can start on YouTube. There's so many free resources out there to start learning about different aspects of yourself. If you have a lot of issues as it relates to love, start with Venus. Where's your Venus at? What's aspecting your Venus? So just look at the Venus part of your chart. If you have a lot of issues as it relates to money, then you might want to look at your second house. Also, Venus has to do with that too, but you might want to look more at your second house. Also, how the sign Taurus shows up in your chart, that sort of thing. So, you're gonna learn and pull the different veils of illusion over your eyes slowly but surely, but it's worth investing in the time to learn your astrology information, okay? And if you are looking for tools and jewels, somebody to support you a little bit more intimately on this journey, then check out my links in my bio and set some time up with me, all right? So sending you so much love, joy, peace, prosperity, and abundance until we meet again. Peace, y'all.